Let's move on to the Kyle Lowry sign and trade situation. And the context here is that the Raptors did not feel that the offers that they got for Lowry at the deadline were attractive enough for him to trade him, so they kept him. And I think this was best summarized by a meme that I saw on somewhere where it had the Grim Reaper going door to door.
Yeah.
And like the first door was like, I don't know, Philly and the Clippers. So all the teams that could have acquired Lowry and ended up like not winning the title because they had partially because they had shit point guard play. Believe it or not, as much, I mean, I think I'm wrong on this one, or I was wrong on this one. They might get more value out of him at this point than they would have at the deadline. What do you think of that?
The first thing I think is I own a Reggie Jackson 3-pointer NFT, and I can't have you tanking that value. So it wasn't shit point guard play from the Clippers. It was actually very good point guard play from the Clippers. But no, I'm not sure if it's necessarily more value. I think you're probably in a similar situation as you were at the deadline, maybe a little bit less leverage. Now, the destinations, I would guess the three would be Miami, Philly, could be the Lakers, and could be the Clippers. And it's not like any of those teams have a tremendous amount to give up. And they didn't really have a tremendous amount to give up prior to the trade deadline either. Now, Miami, I guess the sticking point was Tyler Hero. He might have, I think actually the Raptors might have less bargaining power, but I actually think Hero might have played his way down into the Raptors bracket again. I think Hero might have played so poorly that he's actually within the reason for the Raptors to ask for. But I don't really see a great haul here. And that's not to say that like the Raptors can't get a contributor, but it's like you're not getting Simmons. If you trade him to the Lakers, like you might get like Kuzma and KCP, but you're not getting like picks. You're not getting anything like that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think Kuzma, KCP is the level of player that you would sort of expect from a Lowry return at this point. A pick would be nice, but as you said, I mean, people aren't just giving up on picks unless you trade to OKC. Then they're gonna hand those out. That's all they got. I do feel that the number of teams that you can trade Lowry to at this point increases just because you can mix and match. You can match salaries and do a lot of arithmetic to kind of get to find more teams who may need him. Whereas at the deadline, it was sort of limited to 2 or 3 buyers who had shown some interest in the point guard position. Whatever happens with Lowry, what do you think of the idea of retaining him and keeping his services? I'm firmly sort of against it because, not firmly, I'm against it because it doesn't necessarily, he's not the type of guy that you can sort of play 15, 20 minutes a game so that he mentors everybody and gives Malachi Flynn the time he needs. If you're going to hang on to Kyle Lowry's playing 40 minutes a game. Right, he's not. That's what he does. He doesn't know any other way to play the game. So he's not a guy you can bring on in a part-time role for mentorship purposes. He only knows one way to play. That's my main reason why I think Lowry probably isn't a great fit in Toronto, as much as it pains me to say that. And that time is better invested because the most valuable thing in the world is in the NBA is minutes, and you got to give your minutes to people who you hope will be part of your long-term future. And right now, that looks like it's Malachi Flynn and Gary Trent Jr. and those guys. So that's my rationale for looking for a Lowry trade. What do you think of keeping him? Does that make any sense from any angle?
I think, like, I have to stipulate, if they take Suggs, then absolutely not. I mean, Suggs would mean that you have, what's that? Van Vliet, Suggs, Lowry, Flynn, and Trent, all guys who can only play the guard spots. And you said like Lowry's going to demand, or he's going to play 40 minutes a game, and that's not because he's like a selfish player. I'm sure he would accept a role like that. He's just too good. You can't, like, Nick Nurse and Kyle Lowry have an established relationship, and like the Raptors aren't the type of organization to just go full tank unless it's like the last 2 weeks of the season and everyone's like resting. Lowry isn't going to accept 38 minutes a game, or sorry, he's not going to accept 15 minutes a game because his play is going to dictate that he's going to play 38 minutes a game. He's that type of player. So yeah, there's just not room for him. And you're right, Flynn. It's not just Flynn's minutes; it's Trent's minutes. It's if they pick up like someone in the second round, because a lot of the second round targets are going to end up being guards. So you get like typically in the second round, you'd be looking for a very specific skill, and oftentimes there are basically shooters who have zero other skills who fall to the second round, and those are sometimes the highest value to players to pick up in the second round. Is like this guy's he's from Utah, he's 6'4", he can only shoot, he does nothing else, but like we'll take a flyer on him. Those types of players. So I can see like the sort of like mentorship role suiting him like from a character perspective, but he's too skilled at this point.
Yeah, and I think Blake broke down in his Athletic article, you know, a lot of different sign and trade situations for Lowry. So there's so regardless of whether we're able to move him, I think we can all agree that the interest in Lowry in general has increased since the trade deadline, because people have kind of seen that it's important to have good point guard play, good leadership on the court, and talent alone sort of isn't enough. And Philly, to me, is, you know, you talk about like irresponsible. Like it was irresponsible for them from a management standpoint not to trade for Lowry. What was it, Maxey they were hanging on to or whatever it was? I mean,
Thibault maybe.
Yeah, well, you make that trade as much as it hurts, because if you want to get value, you got to give up value. The Raptors know that best when they traded Valanciunas for Gasol, and it was in a trade. It's always in all good trades, both teams benefit. Philly was looking for a deal where only they benefit. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere. And I thought that was a very poor decision on their management's part. But you know what, man, F Philly. You know, who cares about them?
No, I think also, like, not only did it show from a general, like, they lacked talent perspective of the point guard position, but just like it perfectly encapsulated like that last game. Embiid had what, 7-8 turnovers. No one could get the ball to him in the post. They didn't have anyone who could like throw like a little entry pass. Like, he couldn't duck in quickly and get the ball. Like, I can't, like, being a Raptors fan for like my entire waking life, like I can't tell you how many times I've seen Lowry like pick the ball up and at half court like throw a really long dart into like a guy who just sprinted down the floor, and it is in good post position. Like, yeah. They could have used nothing more than specifically Kyle Lowry, but I just don't see. I mean, if Morey calls tomorrow and calls Ujiri tomorrow and says, we'll give you Maxey straight up for Kyle Lowry, I'd prefer Kuzma and KCP to that. And if that's on the table, then that's probably the best offer they get.
Well, at this point, I mean, you're going to lose him for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So any offer is better than no offer. So I would take whatever's on offer for Lowry.
But I think he's the type of guy. He would almost rather, if it's going to be because there are only a certain number of teams that need a point guard and are winning teams. And he's the type of guy that I'm sure he'd rather stay in Toronto. And even if it means like he's playing 10 minutes a game, than go to like, I don't know, Sacramento, or that's a bad option because they have two guards, but a losing team that is just going to throw a whole bunch of money at him.
All right, man. Let's round this off with one more topic that we had identified. Bradley Beal is a guy who's like, it seems like he's been on the trade market for like 20 years. Is he ever not been on the market? Like, even when the Wizards were good, he was on the market. So I don't know exactly what's going on with Beal. The Raptors always get linked with him for whatever reason, even though there's been no like. I think Ujiri made a call to inquire about it like last year, and since then, like it's a trade people love talking about. To me, that trade is like you got to give up too much so that when you get him here, there's nobody to play with, unless the Wizards are willing to are looking to get younger and want to deal in picks and these sort of things. What's your take on the Beal situation?
Yeah, I just want to first off, it's just hilarious. Like, the Beal rumors started, you're right, when they're a winning team, and it's like, we got to move Beal to like build around Wall. We need to get Wall more help. Beal's this like young asset. Let's go get a star for him. And then just last year, it's like, we need to move Wall to build around Beal. Wall's got to get out of here. We need to get Beal some good co-stars. Yeah, I mean, like, and this goes back to an earlier conversation we had about the quality in the league. Like, okay, put Beal on the Raptors. Let's say it's Fred, 4, and like a whole bunch of picks, a tremendous amount of picks, like enough to make you like sick to your stomach thinking about like 10 years from now, I'm going to be watching this Raptors team. I can't believe it. Like, even then, is that a team that's like guaranteed to win the conference finals in the East? To me, like, I'd probably still take the Nets over a Beal, OG, Siakam core. And I think they play the Bucks pretty closely. I think they play whatever iteration of the Sixers we see, whether with or without Simmons, pretty closely. I think they play the Celtics pretty closely. And that's not even to mention Heat, Hornets are getting better. Like, there's just a ton of talent in the East right now. It's not really the time to make a win now move. And that applies to Lillard as well. And I know, like, I'm sure every NBA fan base except for the Trailblazers fans are coming up with fake Damian Lillard trades to try to entice maybe the GM's browsing like the back pages of Instagram and sees like your Lillard jersey swap.
Nice graphic, must be a nice trade.
Yeah. But I mean, I just don't see. You're right. You're probably giving up 2 of Fred, OG, and Pascal for either of those guys. And 4, I imagine, because like Lillard and Beal, like, this isn't going to be the Kawhi deal, which was a miracle, does not happen, not only for the Raptors, ever. I mean, that's going to go down, even though he left after a year, that's going to go down as like one of the most lopsided superstar trades. I mean, that's like the definition of like 4 quarters for $1. Like, Jakob Poeltl's good. DeMar DeRozan had 2 serviceable, slightly below all-star years in San Antonio. And it was a late first-round pick they acquired. Like, that doesn't happen. It was a miracle.
So with Beal, man, one of the strikes against Beal is that he's been in the league for a very long time. He's been around for a while now. And it's not like he's always had crap teams around him. The Wizards have had some decent units with him and Wall that should have done better in the postseason. His history, like his record as a playoff performer, as a team playoff performer, his team's record in the playoffs, and the general quality of Wizards basketball, especially on the defensive end, has not been great throughout his career. So I don't see Beal as somebody who's going to come in and elevate the rest of the guys. Yeah, he might get good individual scoring. It's kind of like DeMar DeRozan's a perfect example. DeMar DeRozan had some very good individual scoring without necessarily great team results. So to me, you're getting maybe not even slightly better, because DeMar had a pretty damn good season. So you're getting a similar type player than what you had in DeMar over to the Raptors. And we have tried that experiment before. It doesn't really work. We need people who play strong team basketball, elevate everybody's game. Yes, Kawhi Leonard is a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing, so you're not going to get that. But I just don't see how Bradley Beal, which is very parallel to DeMar DeRozan, is gonna solve the Raptors' problems. I just don't see it, especially on the defensive side, where the Raptors were brutal last year. And again, maybe part of it is Aaron Baines, but overall, getting a guy like Beal on here is not. You know what I think? I think Raptor fans are still sort of scarred from that 4-0 sweep way back when, and deep psychologically, they feel like they need that guy on their side because that's what happened to them.
Well, and he had an excellent series. In defense of Beal, like, he's a scoring champ. He's a good player. I agree with you that like you need like more than just scoring, like to be that sort of what we were talking about, like a tier 1 player. You need more than just scoring. Like, every single player that you would say, no doubt, I can win a championship with this guy being my best guy, is either a scorer and a great like setup man, playmaker, a scorer and a great rebounder, a scorer and can play excellent defense, etc. So Beal might not be that guy. I think there is something to be said about avoiding the purgatory, which is like, where whatever the Hornets and the Pistons prior to this year have spent the last decade in, which is like good enough to challenge for the 8th seed, bad enough to, potentially be in the lottery and jump up a bunch of spots. That's just not a good place for your organization to be. So I want to see some drive, I guess. Like, whether that means getting way younger or going for a win now move, I might be on board for that. Maybe not Beal, but if the guy comes up, I'm not opposed to it in principle.
So that's not purgatory. Purgatory is like if you're always good enough for like the 5th or 6th seed, but never getting any better, which is what the Raptors were for the longest time under Chris Bosh. If you're struggling to get the 7th or 8th seed for consistently, you should blow that shit up because that's not going anywhere. But I agree with you, man. I mean, Beal in theory might be okay. In practicality, he probably isn't going to happen. And just me personally does not necessarily excite me because I think the Raptors, if you had to give me the option of get Beal in and trade, like, I don't know, let's say Van Vliet or Siakam, I would still opt for our status quo because I think Pascal Siakam's defensive impact on the Raptors is usually very understated. I think he holds the Raptors defense together. If the Raptors had some decent big man play last year, I think our defense would be a lot better because a lot of the times we just had to like scramble to cover the defensive holes in the middle. I would still go with the current roster. I think the current roster is fine. I think, yeah, we need to get a big man. I think if you do the Mobley thing, or if you just draft Suggs and just get incrementally improve and get some backup for Khem Birch, I think the Raptors will go up. What did they finish last year? 12th? Were they somewhere around there?
Yeah,
silly, right? I mean, I can see them easily jumping up 5 or 6 or 7 spots even, just by bringing the same team back next year with some minor modification. Unless there is an attractive proposition, which isn't as risky and is more clear to me, I don't see why the Raptors should do anything. And I don't think they will.
Yeah. And, you never know who the next guy who wants out is going to be. Like, you never know. Could be anyone. So you're right. It's good to be in a position where you're good enough to add one guy and be a championship contender. And that's like, I mean, if there's ever a team that's proven that that's a viable way to construct a championship contender, it's the Raptors. That's exactly what they did. So
let's end off on this one last point. DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry joining forces again. Of all the stuff that I have seen over the summer so far, that probably is the most realistic thing I can think of because the two are best buddies. They're open about it. I think they would love to play together. Both have the ability to kind of shape their future. I just don't see why they wouldn't be actively talking and trying to maneuver that and orchestrate something where they come together. I think if Lowry doesn't re-sign in Toronto and I think he's joining DeMar DeRozan in LA or some other destination. I think that's if I had a Bet365 account and they were offering that, I'd put a couple of $100 on that one.
Yeah. No, that was one of the, every year, like the yearly tradition of the Lakers jersey swap free agency, like a wave of Laker jersey swaps. So that was one where I was like, yeah, I can see this. DeMar's an LA guy. Lowry's trying to win a ring. He's a good contributor, but doesn't want the pressure of, being the second, third best guy on the team. Yeah. And honestly, like, I guess I'll pose you the question before we sign off. Is that your favorite? Like, add Lowry and DeMar to the Lakers, and say we get back Kuzma and KCP. Is that your favorite to win the championship?
Well, so let me just first say that I don't really care about any other team but the Raptors. So every other team can just go to hell. I mean, don't care. Don't get happiness from them winning or I get enjoyment from them losing. But so I don't care what happens to even DeMar. Don't care about him. Don't care about the Lakers. It's the most plausible. I'd add that I'd be happy with a Kuzma level player. That's about the quality of player that I would expect to get back in the best case scenario for a Lowry trade. At this point, I would even settle for someone like Maxey from Philly, if that's possible. Tyler Hero, as you said, he's played him down, would settle for him too. At this point, you're looking for any sort of return on an asset that you're going to lose for nothing. So you can't really be too picky at this point.